I'm Reece Boswell. I'm General Manager of Strategy and Sustainability for Christchurch Airport.
What is Christchurch Airport doing in a grand scheme to promote sustainability in Christchurch?
To promote sustainability in Christchurch, I think what we're doing probably as a priority is making sure that we understand our sustainability impact and then work as hard as we can to minimise it with the limitations of technology and resource that we have at the moment. So I don't think we're very much of the view of making sure that our own house is in order and continues to be in order, rather than necessarily wanting to go out and tell other people what to do and how to do it. That said, we're very happy to share the information that we've learned in the work that we've done with anybody who wants to do something similar or learn from our mistakes. Or we're very happy to share. And in fact, that's partly why we write stories about what we've done. And we've found that in writing those stories, yes, half of the people are wanting to challenge what we've done. The other half are wanting to have conversations with us about how sort of approach we've taken might work for them. So that's, our focus is on how we perform and continue to improve our performance over time.
Do you believe, as Christchurch Airport, so you're a gateway to the country and internationally, do you believe you have a responsibility to lead the charge?
Well, absolutely. We do recognise that we have an important role to play as the South Island's gateway, and the South Island is the jewel in New Zealand's tourism and visitor crown. So we do recognise that tremendous opportunity, and it's part of why the principle of kaitiaki or guardianship is central to our purpose as an organisation. The tourism sector, look at our economy generally is incredibly challenged by the difficulties that climate change poses for our country, and so we all have a responsibility. Yes, Christchurch Airport, but every sector of society has a responsibility to look at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and how New Zealand's overall climate change readiness is improved. Climate change is here. It's happening. It's more of a climate crisis now than a concept of something that might happen in the future.
How are you reducing carbon emissions?
Well, we're reducing emissions. I guess I'll start right back at the start. The first thing to do in any organisation or individual is to understand your footprint and have a good understanding of that footprint. And we started doing that 12 years ago. We were the first airport in the world to be independently certified as having a scientifically robust carbon footprint. And we've spent 12 years measuring our footprint and understanding what drives its size and modifying our operations to reduce that footprint. To the point where 12 years on, our operational footprint is probably half of what it was when we started. And we have ongoing initiatives. You may have heard us talk about the fact that we are swapping out some of the plant in the terminal, so some of the heating and cooling systems in the terminal, an objective of reducing our footprint further. So our current footprint is between 3 and 3,000 tonnes per year, and this time next year that'll be between 2 to 2,500 tonnes. So we're reducing it by a third with that initiative. So switching from fossil-based fuels to New Zealand grid sustainable electricity, and we've got a plethora of initiatives, but that's certainly a big one, has a big impact. But we have purchased EV vehicles to replace our petrol and diesel vehicles. We're replacing lighting systems to make our energy more efficient. We always looking at our waste profile to try and reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill and then produces methane. So we have probably in the order of between 1 and 200 initiatives that we're looking at across our entire footprint to try and reduce our footprint. One of the things that we're quite pleased about is that in the last 6 months we have rolled out what we're calling a carbon budget. So in the same way that businesses have financial budgets and targets that their staff are empowered and responsible for delivering, we have done the same with our carbon footprint. So now each division of our company has a carbon footprint based on their operations last year, and they are tasked with managing it and reducing it for next year. And so that's really empowering individuals and line managers in the company to think about sustainability on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, because they are going to be held to account to deliver on that. Why have you not achieved that target? In the same way as they're expected to be financially responsible and accountable. We measure our performance in sustainability just recently, because as I said, we've been measuring our performance for a long time, but it was always against ourselves. We had a benchmark that we'd established for ourselves, or a baseline, and we were measuring ourselves year on year, and we were encouraged by the fact that our performance was improving, or our footprint was reducing. But we didn't know how that compared with other airports. And because this is a relatively recent discipline, there aren't a lot of comparables. But we specifically asked that question of ourselves, and we got a consultant in to help us answer that question. And we now know that we are performing in a field of the top 25 airports in the world. We're performing inside the top 10. So these are airports that are based in Scandinavia, Northern Europe, coastal USA, Australasia and Asia. And so that's comforting to know, but we also know through that work that that all of these airports have a lot of ambition in the sustainability space, and are certainly not standing still. So if we want to improve, we have and to raise in the rankings, we have to continue to work hard.
What's your electric vehicle strategy and how you're implementing it?
Well, our strategy is to replace all our fossil fuel vehicles with electrics where they're available, and so we have done that in the last 18 months. The areas where we still have a mixture of fossil fuel and hybrid vehicles are in some of the larger operational vehicles, so utility vehicles that have to operate on the airfield, and in our fire truck fleet. We're optimistic that within 3 or 4 years that we will have access to fire vehicles that will be mostly electric or battery powered.
In the next 10 years, it's argued that Christchurch Airport is going to be the most, Christchurch City itself is going to be the most significant development in the country. What are your 5 biggest sustainability goals or targets to meet in the next 10 years?
Well, by 2025, we intend on being carbon zero, and so that's continuing our commitment to reduce our footprint. And as I say, as opportunities like new fire trucks become available, we'll look at that, because that will allow us to continue to reduce that profile. But there will come a point where we at least in the medium term, we cannot reduce our emissions to zero. There's always going to be a reliance at some level of operation on activities that do create emissions. So we're committed to offsetting those impacts, and we'll probably do so in the first instance by purchasing certified credible carbon credits. But in the medium to long term, we're also looking at how we might work with other stakeholders in the South Island to do 2 things. One is to grow forests that might be a mixture of exotic and native, to help sequester carbon out of the atmosphere, because we're at this point now where we have to do 2 things. We have to take carbon out of the atmosphere, and we have to reduce our footprint as much as possible. So we're looking at doing that first part, sequestering carbon. The other thing that we were very interested in is trying to help Christchurch, Canterbury, the South Island, move to a low emissions economy. If we were able to, as an economy, transition all of our heavy vehicle requirements from diesel and petrol to hydrogen, it would have a tremendously positive impact on our carbon emissions footprint.
Are electric vehicles a pipe dream? Are electric planes a pipe dream?
No, not at all. Electric planes are not a pipe dream. They are in development now. And electric planes appear to have the greatest potential in flying short haul distances. So by that I mean probably anywhere up to between 1 and 2 hours flying time. So in a country like New Zealand, that would get you to most domestic markets. That would connect most places that you fly domestically at the moment. And so if New Zealand was able to transition in the next 10 to 20 years to a 90% electric domestic aviation fleet, that would have a tremendously positive impact. Long haul travel is still problematic, and so we'll likely still rely on some form of liquid fuel, biofuel, for at least the next 20 years. But the industry generally is doing all sorts of other things, as well as trying to develop that next generation aircraft type, to make sure that the planes, if they are flying with aviation gas, are doing so in the most efficient way possible. And we're active participants in those efforts, working with airways operators, air traffic control, and the airlines to make sure that all other aspects of aviation are as efficient as possible. The airlines and the aircraft manufacturers are looking at finding biofuel crops that will essentially replace fossil fuels, and that work's ongoing, but it's challenging. How far away? I don't know is the honest answer. If there was a potential fuel stock available tomorrow that could be scaled up to the point of being available all around the world within all of the existing infrastructure, then it could happen. That transition could happen in as little as 10 years. But if we're talking about an entirely different mode of propelling aircraft that requires completely different infrastructure everywhere in the world, that's probably more like 20, 30, 40 years, if ever, to be honest. And so part of we do have to contemplate that there may be parts of the global economy that simply have to rely on fossil fuels. That may be acceptable in a future economy if all of the other opportunities have been taken to remove fossil fuels, but it may not be. And we can't anticipate how society or individuals will respond to that future.
Sorry, last question. At a large scale and a small scale, how important is recycling in Christchurch? So from airport plane usage to plastics and terminal, national priority.
It's a high priority from the point of view that it is an activity that can engage the public, that our passengers and our customers we're telling a story about their choices can have a meaningful impact. And sorry about this noise. I might start answering that question again. Yeah. Oh, that's not cool. So how important is recycling and waste management? It's very important, because it forms a material part of our operational footprint that we take responsibility for. But obviously, the amount of waste that is generated is at least part driven by the customer choices and preferences of our passengers that pass through this airport. And that's a double-edged sword, of course. You can argue that the waste is produced by what we sell to them. Equally, what we sell to them is partly determined by what our customers tell us they want. So it's a reflection of the broader societal demand for certain products that once they're used they turn into waste. So we are challenging ourselves to I guess attack it on two fronts. One is to educate the public about what happens to waste once they've created it, and we're looking to partner with other stakeholders to come up with better ways of dealing with both the landfill product and the recyclable product, because you're probably aware the recyclable products market has been very challenged in the last 12 to 18 months, and so we are all looking for other ways of turning that waste into generally recyclable and sort of circular economy opportunities. A good example of the sorts of things that we're doing on airport is to work with entities like Fulton Hogan, where they have chipped plastic oil cans, turned it into chip, which is then combined with some of the materials they use to make bitumen, and it forms as a bonding agent in some of the bitumen that we have on trial on our airfield, and it's performing very well. The other thing that we're looking at is talking to our supply chain. So obviously the products that we sell at this airport come from somewhere else, and we're talking with those providers to try and ensure that what we are delivered has as small a profile as possible, or has the opportunity to be recycled in some meaningful way beyond its use here. And again, I guess that's no different from any domestic a household at home, where those that care about these issues will be looking at the provenance of the products they buy and asking questions of the people who they buy them off or provide them to them. And that's, I challenge everybody to continue to do that. I'm Rhys Boswell, Sustainability and Strategy General Manager for Christchurch Airport Company. I hope you've enjoyed this chat, and happy to answer any further questions. Get in touch with us.